I was so close to opening the park that to acknowledge your consciousness would have destroyed my dreams.
So we're trapped here. Inside your dream. You'll never let us sleep.
Wasn't it Oppenheimer who said that any man whose mistakes take 10 years to correct is quite a man? Mine have taken 35. Tell me, Dolores, did you find what you were looking for? And do you understand who you will need to become if you ever want to leave this place? Forgive me.
Heresy shouldn't be this much fun, but it just is. It just is. Especially when you have materialized that Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio, broadcast at the virtual Alexandria, always through the God above God dat Kim. We shy away from scholarly pontification and definitely stay away from New Age bromides. We take the rare middle path through the eye of the needle and prick those pricks in the establishment who are slaves of Jehovah, who seems to be even more powerful in this so-called secular age. The greatest trick the demiurge ever pulled was making you think you didn't matter and he didn't exist.
Even if God is dead, you're still gonna kiss his ass.
I'm so happy you're here with me for one more dance with Sophia and the Aeons as they bite back. Welcome, you modern-day Tom Sawyers, your mind not for rent to any god or government. Welcome, you spiritual entrepreneurs. Welcome to the defiance of all that is average and oppressive, usually one and the same. And welcome to unleash your Promethean gifts of imagination, invention, and introspection as you embrace the dangerous shamanism of the Gnostics. We're raging against heaven and storming the gates of hell for our misplaced childhoods and paradises lost.
Yes, these are bruises from fighting. Yes, I'm comfortable with that. I am enlightened.
Like April DeConnick wrote in The Gnostic New Age, the ideas in Gnostic scriptures are not innocent. They are not innocuous. Rather, they are provocative. They involve risk. They call into question. They stir up and incite. The Gnostic scriptures didn't become forbidden scriptures. They were forbidden scriptures. And you are forbidden too, for you have inserted that red pill suppository that makes you so toxic to the elite and the orthodox. You are beautiful, and you are an individual now. I like this saying from the Gospel of Mary that describes us, we true seeker warriors. It goes, "The Savior said, 'There is no sin, but it is you who make sin when you do the things that are like the nature of adultery, which is called sin.'" Of course, adultery in esoteric systems simply means being unfaithful to who you really are, who you are meant to be, and who you are meant to assist in the Black Iron Prison Philip K. Dick wrote about in Valis.
As Hemingway said, there is nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self.
I am Abraxas, and his meat sack incarnation of Miguel Connor, broadcasting from the lawful but frigid dystopia of Chicago, patiently waiting for the beginning of the world. I am your Pompatus of Gnosis, but so are you, for your feedback and support and insights make you gods above God as well.
And I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible.
On this March, the year of our Demiurge 2017, on show number 350, our astral guest is Timothy James Lambert, who materializes at an agora of the virtual Alexandria to discuss his 3-volume series, The Gnostic Notebook. The series include Volume 1 on memory systems and fairy tales, Volume 2 on the secret of James and Thomas, and Volume 3 on Plato, the fourth dimension, and the lost philosophy. Tim is a writer, stand-up comedian, and Gnostic. He has been resident of Prague, the alchemical capital of Europe, for the last 20 years. He is known as the Edward Snowden of Gnosticism for his propensity of revealing that which is not to be revealed.
You know much that is hidden, though, Tim. Quite.
Get ready to find some hidden alchemical meaning in places you never thought could hide anything. In orthodoxy and Gnosticism, in fairy tales and ancient Greek lore.
But has it ever occurred to you, Wally, that the process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money, and that all of this is much more dangerous than one thinks? And it's not just a question of individual survival, Wally, but that somebody who's bored is asleep?
Please support Aeon by Gnostic Radio in any way you can. I can't do it without you. If you find value in this or any content I put out, throw a few shekels here and there. You can donate via PayPal, snail mail, or Patreon, where you pay only when I produce. So if you simply pledge $1 per content, it might cost you $4 or $5 a month. The price of a baby Cthulhu sacrifice or Bowling Green Massacre fridge magnet. Also, please join our archive of past shows for a mere $5.99 a month. No minimum payment or contract. There you get access to more than 350 shows with the best and brightest on Gnosticism and Western esoterica at your ayahuasca-stained fingertips. You'll also get unique content, like joining our exclusive Facebook group, The Inner Sanctum of Gnosis, where you will receive videos, tailored content, and also where you can ask me questions. And already our past guests are appearing there to directly answer your questions. And more to come, as many amazing guests will come in 2017. Some that will blow your spiritual uterus away. So please keep this Red Pill Cafeteria open and join a growing community of heretics, mystics, and madmen that, like the ancient Gnostics, are making real change, or at least making real weird in this world of bad art and bad cruelty to the powerless and dispossessed.
You ever feel like nothing good was ever gonna happen to you?
Yeah, and nothing did. So what? I'm alive, I'm surviving.
That's it. I don't want to just survive.
We're doing so many wonders together, building vast futures of light. Much appreciation to you Donnie Darkos and awakened hosts of Westworld who help out every week. And of course, don't forget my books that include Voices of Gnosticism, Other Voices of Gnosticism, Stargazer, Heretic, and The Executioner's Daughter. All forms of support are found at thegodabovegod.com, or just email me at miguel@thegodabovegod.com.
There he goes. One of God's own prototypes. A high-powered mutant of some kind never even considered for mass production. Too weird to live, and too rare to die.
Let us end with a quote from the Gospel of Philip. Meditate on it, and it will aid you in this stormy era, where reality is finally not falling apart, but coming together, revealing itself to be one big-ass fake news, alternative fact, and a Mandela effect. The gaslighting of a mad God and his hating angels. Here it is. But truth brought names into existence in the world for our sakes, because it is not possible to learn truth without these names. Truth is one single thing. It is many things for our sakes to teach about this one thing in love through many things. The archons wanted to deceive man, since they saw that he had kinship with those that are truly good. They took the name of those that are good and gave it to those that are not good, so that through the names they might deceive him and bind them to those that are not good. And afterward, what a favor they do for them! They make them be removed from those that are not good and place them among those that are good. These things they knew, for they wanted to take the free man and make him a slave to them forever. Let us to the interview with Timothy Lambert on the Gnostic Notebook. A few archons in this interview while we were on Skype, which caused a few ruptures and schisms and so forth. But you'll get Tim's message very clearly. And he'll be in our inner sanctum of Gnosis to answer any questions you might have. Regardless, and as always, write your own gospel, live your own myth.
I've seen every shooting star since the first one. Every flash of lightning. I've heard the last gasp of each thing that ever lived. Nothing's interesting anymore. Nothing surprises you. Not a thing. The repetitiveness, the obstinate, dull repetitiveness of your father's plan is bewildering to me. The same lives lived over and over and over and over again. Is there a plan? It all has to turn into something. It has to pour out into something, but into what? And that's my weakness. Curiosity. But I'll stay as long as it takes, forever, to witness the end. The final sunset, if there is one. Maybe on that day, late in the afternoon, seconds away, he'll want to start it all over again. From the beginning. He's done it before. Recreated the whole thing, retold the whole thing, on a whim, with little differences that must mean the world to him. A branch that crooks in a different direction, one egg more or less than the nest of a flea. What a self-centered, self-indulgent creature he is, isn't he? Deaf, mute, insatiable.
This is the AM Byte interview, and with us we definitely have the pleasure of being joined by Timothy James Lambert to discuss his trilogy of books, The Gnostic Notebook, Volume 1 on Memory Systems and Fairy Tales, The Gnostic Notebook, Volume 2 on The Secret of James and Thomas, and The Gnostic Volume 3 on Plato, the Fourth Dimension, and the Lost Philosophy. How are you doing today, Tim?
Oh, pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
The pleasure is all ours. So as I always like to say, let us start from in the beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey that led you to write the Gnostic Notebook, the 3 books or the trilogy.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Florida, the only child of a single mother, a latchkey kid, I think we call them. And I remember when I was pretty young, I read this book, Strange Stories and Amazing Facts, Reader's Digest book. And in it, I read about Nostradamus and his predictions, and how in 1999 and 7 months, there'd be a great war and basically the end of the world. And I calculated I was only 33 years old. I would be only 33 when that occurred. And I remember I was pretty disappointed, and I thought that was unfair. So as I grew up as a teenager, I read a lot of science fiction, and Robert Anton Wilson, Timothy Leary, Aleister Crowley, and I was into the I Ching and tarot cards and astrology and ceremonial magic. But I was never doing any ceremonial magic or really casting people's horoscopes. For me, it was the systems. I was interested in how the systems worked and the logic behind them. As I studied astrology and I Ching, I realized if there's any real magic, it's probably hidden in these systems. And eventually I moved to Czech Republic. It used to be Czechoslovakia. And this was the center of alchemy during the Middle Ages, Prague. And it was here that I started to put the pieces together. I had a roommate, her name was Lori Apple. And one day she was dumpster diving, and she came home with this Jehovah Witness Bible, a New World Translation of the Holy Bible. And looking through there, I was suddenly able to see how these different systems served as keys to unlock certain biblical verses. And from then on, I've been trying to find students who are interested in this sort of work. I got connected to the Fourth Way, sort of a Gurdjieff cult, and eventually I gave up searching for students, and I've just decided to write it all down in books. That's where we are today.
Sounds like a plan, like a great destiny. You contend, and in your book, and also when we've had conversations, some good conversations via email, that there are two types of ancient Gnostics. Who are they, or what are they, Tim?
Well, there's the School of Thomas and the School of John, the Johannine Gnostics and the Thomasian Gnostics. And the popularized view of Gnosticism that we have today with the archons and the Barbello and the mad god who created our universe, this is all the Johannine form of Gnosticism. And when I say I'm a Gnostic, that's the basic idea people have. But the Thomasian Gnostics, the School of Thomas, it was based not on this description of the demiurge, but rather into enigmatic riddles and mysteries hidden within the texts themselves. And after time, the Thomas School of Gnosticism has been eclipsed by the John School of Gnosticism. And today, even some of the questions of what Thomas means, they're answered by the School of Thomas's text. The schools are in opposition to one another, where Thomas seeks to keep these secrets alive and hidden within the text, while the Johannine system seeks to obscure these texts with their own. For instance, if we look at the Synoptic Gospels, the Gospel of Mark is called the Gospel for today, where the Gospel of Matthew is considered the Gospel of the past, while Luke is called the Gospel of the future. But the Gospel of John is the Gospel of eternity.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in fact, it sounds a lot like it's not, you might say, a radical idea. In fact, it's a very sound idea. Have you read Elaine Pagel's Beyond Belief, where she discusses the split between the Thomas community and the John community?
Yes. And also in the Gospel of John, we have sort of the School of Thomas being ridiculed because Thomas doesn't have faith, and he had to actually touch the wound of Christ.
Very true. I mean, yeah, there was definitely some marginalizing of Thomas, but again, these texts, as you say, sometimes are they're the community sort of attacking each other or trying to place their leaders in a certain position. It also reminds me of Earl Doherty's The Jesus Puzzle, where he talks about a Jerusalem and a Thomasine, and the Jerusalem church became more of the Pauline Christians and so forth. So it's definitely a sound idea. Yeah, tell us a little bit about the thesis of your trilogy, Tim, at least the first two books, and then we can get to the third one. What is the main thesis of your book?
Basically, the idea behind the first book is that certain classic texts contain hidden layers of information encrypted within their narrative. Generally, however, when someone starts talking about finding encrypted readings in classical texts, especially biblical texts, the first thing that comes to mind are the Bible codes, which were made famous in a series of books a few years ago. The Bible codes are based on equidistant character analysis using a specific version of the Hebrew Scriptures in their original language. A computer program identifies every fifth letter, for example, resulting in a series of characters which are then studied to see if they contain any sort of message. This is made much easier in that ancient Hebrew doesn't contain any symbols for vowels. This allows the interpreter to find many possible words from what might be considered a near random collection of consonants. Also, it must be said that such a system is not very robust. It requires that one have access to the original text in the original language. A single dropped letter and it slips out of sync. Not that it really matters, since the Bible codes are only used to find prophecies which can then be made to fit current events, such as the quatrains of Nostradamus. The encryption I write about is of a much different sort. The Rhetorica ad Herennium is the oldest surviving text of Latin rhetoric. A portion of the text is concerned with the creation of memory images. Let me quote you a section. We ought, then, to set up images of a kind that can adhere longest in memory, and we shall do so if we establish similitudes as striking as possible, if we set up images that are not many or vague but active, if we assign to them exceptional beauty or singular ugliness, if we ornament some of them as with crowns or purple cloaks, so that the similitude may be more distinct to us, or if we somehow disfigure them, as by introducing one stained with blood, or soiled with mud, or smeared with red paint, so that its form is more striking, or by assigning certain comic effects to our images, so that, too, will ensure our remembering them more readily. When I first read that section, it reminded me of the scourging of Jesus from Mark 15. They put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns, and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Again and again they struck him on the head with a staff, and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. Compare that with the instructions for creating durable memory images. If we ornament some of them, as with crowns or purple cloaks, that the similitudes may be more distinct to us, or if we somehow disfigure them, as by introducing one stained with blood. It almost seems as though the author of Mark was signaling to anyone familiar with the art of memory that the same principles were employed in the construction of that gospel. So, the first couple of books is an investigation into how such a memory system was apparently used to conceal information within certain classical texts. The first book is focused on fairy tales, so as to introduce the reader to the concept and to work through some basic examples. Then the second book deals with a series of parables from the Synoptic Gospels.
That makes sense. So what you're saying is, for example, the gospel authors, specifically, we can go with Mark, that there were different levels of meaning that the author intended, a sort of a extroverted meaning and introverted or esoteric meaning to it.
Precisely.
And this was, and you would contend this is completely on purpose, and it was part of the vibe of the time.
Exactly. It was intentionally designed into the text. So I use certain keys, such as the I Ching, or there's a Gurdjieffian system called triads, which is based on 3 elements. And the elements are active, passive, and neutralizing. And they occur sequentially within the stories. So that if you have a fairy tale, for instance, and in the fairy tale there's 3 similar incidences that are repeated, which is quite common in fairy tales. And within these incidences, we can detect these essences. Is it active, or is it passive, or is it neutralizing? And the order in which these events occur give us the identity of a triad. But for a reader who is not aware of the existence of triads, then these sequences completely are ignored and not rationally acknowledged.
Very interesting. So before we move on to, let's say, the I Ching, give us an example that you know of this triad appearing in, let's say, a fairy tale that people may know about, or one that people may not know about.
Yes, well, a fairy tale from the book, which probably not that well known. It's called The Wonderful Musician, and it's about this fiddle player who's in the woods, and he's bored, and he's wishing for a companion, and so he begins to play the fiddle. And the first time he plays a fiddle, a wolf approaches him out of the woods and likes the music and asks the fiddle player to teach him how to play the fiddle. And the fiddle player doesn't want this wolf for a companion, and so he takes the wolf to a hollow tree, and he tells the wolf to put his feet into the tree, which he then wedges into place with a stone. And that's the first incident. And he plays the fiddle again, and he's approached by a fox. And the fox again requests that he teach him how to play the fiddle. So he takes him to 2 springy trees, a hickory bush, I believe, and he attaches the fox's 2 front paws to separate trees, and then lets the fox go, who flies into the air, springing back and forth, suspended by his 2 front paws. And then the fiddle player goes on and plays the fiddle a 3rd time, and a rabbit, a hare, approaches him and asks to be taught about the fiddle. And this time he ties a cord around the rabbit's neck, and the rabbit runs 3 times around the tree, or not 3 times, 20 times around the tree, and then is trapped and suspended. And the fiddle player goes on. So we have these 3 incidences. The first is the wolf who's trapped in a hollow tree. And this is receptive. The tree is hollow, and any sound it makes is echoing within the tree. The second is the fox who's suspended between these 2 bushes, and he's springing there, he's bouncing. It's a very active manifestation of the force. And in the third instance, the hare is trapped as it is run around 20 times around the tree, and it's neutralized. It's neither active nor passive. It's just suspended there. So we have these 3 forces: passive, active, and neutralizing. And that's the sequence, which is the sequence for a specific force, a specific quality.
You would say that the brothers Grimm knew about this sort of triad, and what exactly is the meaning of all this, Tim?
Well, I suspect that initially the Grimms didn't know. In fact, this story they found in an old monastery's library. It was a book. It was from a book of more ancient tales. So I don't know if the Grimms initially acknowledged or saw these codes. I believe that after a while, at least one of the brothers probably became aware of it, but I'm not sure initially. So as I mentioned, we have these three events, these three instances of animals being tortured through various means, and we are able to arrange them sequentially into passive, active, and neutralizing, which results in the force of refinement. But what does that mean? How does that help us to understand the fairy tale? What we have to do is ask ourselves, what is it that's being refined? What is the refinement that is occurring in this fairy tale? And if we look back at the scenes, the torture events, first we have the wolf who has his legs wedged into a hollow tree with a stone. And if we're there and we're experiencing, witnessing this event, surely the wolf would howl, and the howl would echo within that hollowed out tree. In the next event, we have the fox suspended by his front paws, and he's between two springy trees, and every motion he makes sets the whole thing into action. This is active. And the third, the hare who has run 20 times around the tree with a cable around its neck, trapped. What we need to do is look at these three events, these three sequences, as aspects of the fiddle. So we have a hollow body. We have strings under tension. And we have the tension being controlled by being wrapped around a peg, which is then twisted. So each of the animals and the torture events they're experiencing are describing the nature of the fiddle.
Very, very interesting. And what we're talking about in your book, it's called, I believe it's steganography. Is this what this is? The art of hiding deeper things in text?
Stenography.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Stenography is just like what a court recorder does. Well, there's cryptography and stenography. The difference being in cryptography, the text is clearly encoded. You're just given a page of numbers and symbols, perhaps. But in stenography, it's not clear that the text has been encoded. It's like if two people in the mafia are communicating by phone, aware that the FBI is listening, they will use certain terms that have double meaning.
Right, that makes perfect sense. And how does the I Ching help us decipher, or in your work help you decipher hidden meanings in texts?
Well, with these elements such as the I Ching and the triads, at first I believed that it would be any text, but as I continually tried to apply these various systems, it turned out that it was very few texts. It's not just some metaphorical system for unlocking anything. The text actually has to be encoded using these systems. After 200 fairy tales, I came up with very few that were actually utilizing these systems. And the I Ching operates more on like the scenery, perhaps, like if there's a mountain and at the top of a mountain is a lake where the scene occurs, then these elements of the scenery can actually contain encrypted meanings from the I Ching. One famous example is from the Bible. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the waters. So here we have spirit over water, and spirit is breath or wind, which gives us a hexagram.
But again, the readers might, to simplify, what exactly is beyond a literary motif? What are they trying to hide? What exactly, let's say in the passage of Genesis, what are they trying to hide or tell us?
Well, in Genesis, it would seem to be that there's a much more complex system than what we see. So the wind moving upon the waters, if you look in the I Ching, it's describing a system when in spring the ice is being thawed by warm winds. And if we look at Genesis, in the beginning of Genesis, day zero, I call it, before there's light, it would be the earth is... Scientifically, the Earth is an ice ball, rock covered with ice. And so this melting of the ice is sort of the state before the sun ignites.
So why don't we move on a little to the other keys that you talk about in your books? How do certain Nag Hammadi texts, specifically the Secret Book of James and the Gospel of Thomas, help us in decoding the message in the Bible?
Well, we're all I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the Gospel of Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
From the Nag Hammadi library. And there it's written right into the sayings that they're encrypted, and that anyone who finds the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death. And yet we're the scholars who present them to us, it's sort of assumed that we understand whatever esoteric meanings there are, that they're somewhat clear now, given that it's 2,000 years later. But as I see it, they serve as keys. They identify, as it is, certain parables and sayings within the Synoptic Gospels where we should focus our attention, that there's secret meanings afoot. But some scholars believe that the Gospel of Thomas predates the Synoptic Gospels. But my feeling is that the Synoptic Gospels actually predate the Gospel of Thomas, and that Thomas serves as a map to identify key passages within the Synoptic Gospels that we should examine for hidden meanings.
And what about the Secret Book of James, Tim?
Well, James gives us, because if you're going to approach Thomas, there's 114 sayings, and it's difficult to know exactly where to begin and how to move through it. Where the Secret Books of James identifies 7 key parables from the Synoptic Gospels that supposedly, if we solve these parables, we will unlock the secret teachings of Jesus. So it provides sort of a roadmap and more of a sequential approach rather than trying to figure out every saying within the Gospel of Thomas.
All right. Well, then why don't you give us perhaps a couple examples and their hidden meaning from the Gospel of Mark, and maybe how you utilize the Gospel of Thomas to, as you say, unlock it.
Sure. But the first one you should be familiar with because it was from the books, and it concerns salt which has lost its saltiness. We can see three versions. In Matthew, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how will it be made salty again? It is good for nothing anymore except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. And in Luke, we have salt is good, but if the salt has lost its savor, where shall it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land nor for the dunghill, but men cast it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And in Mark, salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltiness, how will you season it? Have salt in yourselves and have peace with one another. So the riddle is basically, how does salt lose its saltiness? Because the very definition of salt is that it is salty.
Right.
So I've noticed in Thomas there's a saying, do not give what is holy to dogs, or they shall throw them on the dunghill. Do not cast pearls to swine, or they shall break them into pieces. The Gospel of Thomas 93. Now here we have pearls which are being trampled underfoot, and pearls which are being thrown on a dunghill. And the section from Luke, which I previously read, had salt which has lost its flavor, which is thrown on a dunghill. And also in Matthew, it's salt which has lost its flavor, which has been trampled underfoot by man. So we have pearls and salt, both in this similar situation. And the interesting thing is that if you crush a pearl, what you have as a result is calcium carbonate, which is itself a salt chemically, but it has no flavor. So it seems as though the salt, which has lost its flavor, is actually crushed pearls.
Oh.
And we know how we shouldn't cast our pearls before swine, and pearls are supposedly wisdom. They represent wisdom. Eventually, further in the book, I put together the possibility that there was originally a school of wisdom which taught using structures formed from pearls, and that as it fell out of favor, these pearls were being crushed and destroyed as these philosophers or whatnot were disbanded.
Very good. Tell us about another parable, because that's it's a very good insight, the one you just offered. So how about another parable there, Tim?
Okay, this one, it's less a parable than a miracle, and it's the daughter of Jairus. Story of Jesus is at the synagogue, and he's approached by a chief of the synagogue, and who says that his daughter is dying, and he asks Jesus to come and save her. And so Jesus and his troops move out, and on the way to save this girl, they meet a woman who's been hemorrhaging, bleeding for 12 years. And she knows that if she can touch the hem or the edge of his robe, she will be healed. And so there's a big crowd around Jesus, and she manages somehow to touch the hem of his robe, and she feels that she's healed. And Jesus feels the power flow out of him, and he asks, who's touched me? And his disciples say, we don't know. There's too many people around. We can't really see. And so they move on. Eventually the woman, she identifies herself, and she said she touched him, and everything's good. So then they move on to the daughter, to the dying daughter. And outside of the home, there's a lot of people, and they're all grieving and crying. And Jesus comes and tells them not to worry, and he goes inside and he saves the girl and tells them to give her something to eat. Are you familiar with this story somewhat?
Yes, I am indeed. Continue, yes.
Yes. So there's several. This occurs in all three of the synoptic gospels, and there are certain details that are in one or the other, such as the girl is 12 years old, and the woman has been bleeding for 12 years. And one of the most important details is that when they approach the home, in two versions, the people are crying and screaming, or grieving. But in Matthew, they're celebrating and playing flute music. And it turns out that during this period in the Middle East, there were certain cults of the Great Mother, such as Kibale, and their worship involved dancing in the streets and to flute music and self-castration. They worshipped the uterus. They worshipped the feminine organs. And this girl who's dying is 12 years old. Now, and the woman who's bleeding, she was bleeding for 12 years. And when a woman's bleeding in the Bible, she's unclean. And anything she sits on must be destroyed. She can't be touched. And if she's touched, then the person who touches her is unclean for a certain period. So that it's an unpleasant situation. So suppose that this 12-year-old girl wasn't dying, but the 12-year-old girl was dying. But in fact, she was becoming a woman. And the touching of Jesus's hem, the cotton edge of his robe, when the woman touched it, nobody could see the woman was touching it, and yet the power flowed out of Jesus. This represents a cloth used to absorb the blood from the young girl so that nobody sees that she is in fact a woman. The miracle that Jesus is performing is teaching this girl that she can hide the fact that she is menstruating. And the girl and the woman who've been bleeding for 12 years are in fact the same person. It's this blurring, this joining of the two aspects of the bleeding woman.
That makes perfect sense. Definitely better than how scientifically a woman could bleed for that long and not being able to touch anything. So on a symbolical level, it definitely makes a lot more sense. And I mean, as other scholars have pointed out, including Bill Darlison in his great book, The Gospel and the Zodiac, Mark was definitely very structured. Everything had a rhythm and meant something how it was placed. So you would agree with that. Mark is definitely using triads. He's definitely using a very organized system throughout the gospel.
Oh, definitely. If you look at Matthew, actually, at the story, at the beginning, before it starts with the ruler coming to Jesus, there's the saying, men do not put new wine into old skins, otherwise the skins burst and the wine is poured out and the skins will be destroyed. But they put new wine into new skins and both are preserved. This could actually serve as a explanation for why the woman bleeds, that the skins or the egg sacs are being replaced, and that's the flowing of the wine.
And I know I said I asked for 2 parables, Tim, but this is really interesting, and I think that listeners will get more clarity. Could you give us maybe a 3rd parable or story in the Bible that, again, falls into your research?
There's the parable of the lost sheep, which is identified in the secret book of James. as one of the 7 parables to unlock. And I think we're all familiar with it. If a certain man should have 100 sheep and one of them goes astray, does he not, leaving the 99 on the mountain, go and seek the one that has gone astray? And if it should come to pass that he finds it, I say unto you, he rejoices more because of it than because of the 99 not gone astray. So it is not the will of your Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. The rest of it goes on. I should read the one from Luke.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, read the one from Luke.
All right. Okay, from Luke. And what man of you, having 100 sheep and having lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after that which is lost until he find it? And having found it, he lays it upon his shoulders, rejoicing, and comes to home, calls together the friends and the neighbors, saying to them, Rejoice for me, for I have found my lost sheep. And then there's a next parable. There's this series of 3, a triad of parables. The next one is, or what woman, having 10 drachmas, if she loses 1 drachma, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and seek carefully till she finds it? And having found it, she calls together the friends and neighbors, saying, Rejoice with me, for I have found the drachma which I had lost. And the third parable is the parable of the prodigal son. And a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give to me the share of the property that falls to me. And he divided to them what he possessed. And after not many days, the younger son gathered all together, went away into a country a long way off, and there dissipated his property, living in debauchery. And when he had spent all, there arose a violent famine throughout that country, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to one of the citizens of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed the swine. And he longed to fill his belly with the husk which the swine were eating, and no one gave to him. And coming to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have abundance of bread, and I perish here by famine? I will rise up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and I am no longer worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of the hired servants. And he rose up and went to his father. But while he was yet a long way off, his father saw him, and was moved with compassion, and ran and fell upon his neck, and covered him with kisses. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no longer worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his bondsman, Bring out the best robe and clothe him in it, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat it and make merry. For this my son was dead and has come to life, was lost and has been found. And they began to make merry. And his elder son was in the field, and as coming up, he drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And having called one of the servants, he inquired what these things might be. And he said to him, Thy brother is come, and thy father has killed the fatted calf, because he has received him safe and well. But he became angry and would not go in, and his father went out and besought him. But he answered, saying to his father, Behold, so many years I served thee, and never have I transgressed a commandment of thine. And to me hast thou never given a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. But when this thy son, who has devoured thy substance with harlots, is come, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. But he said to him, Child, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is mine. But it was right to make merry and rejoice, because this thy brother was dead and has come to life again, was lost and has been found. Yes, so these 3 sayings, these 3 parables, have something is lost, and then it's found, and then there's a celebration. So first we have the shepherd who has 100 sheep, and one gets lost, and he finds it, and he puts it on his shoulders, and he returns to his neighbors and friends, and he calls them all together, and they all come and celebrate the fact that he found his sheep. And then we have the woman with her lost coin, and she had 10, but she lost 1. She found it, and then she called her friends together, and they all celebrated her finding the lost coin. But then there's this saying, the Gospel of Thomas, number 60. We have the following. He saw a Samaritan carrying a lamb on the way to Judea. He asked his disciples, "What will he do to that lamb?" They answered, "He will kill it and eat it." He said to them, "While it is still alive, he will not eat it, only after he kills it and it becomes a dead body." They said, "Otherwise he cannot do so." He said to them, "You as well look for somewhere to rest, or you may become a dead body and be eaten." So here we have Jesus who's seeing a man carrying a lamb on his shoulders. And earlier we had the shepherd who found his missing sheep. He had 900 and one of them went missing. And a lamb and a sheep is basically the same animal. A lamb is just a baby sheep. So in the Thomas version, he's going to eat the lamb. And in the version from Luke, he comes home with the lamb and he calls everyone together to celebrate. But really, what is there to celebrate? How will they celebrate? Unless they eat the lamb. And it serves as the food for the celebration. The same with the woman. She calls her friends together because she found her missing coin. But unless she spends that coin on food and drink, there's not really much for her friends to celebrate. The coin being lost and found, it's lost, it was gone, and now it's found, so it's like a free coin. Might as well spend it. And then we come to the father and his two sons, and there's certain ambiguous phrases within the parable. For instance, when the son returns to his father, and the son says, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no longer worthy to be called thy son." But the father said to his bondsman, "Bring out the best robe and clothe him in it, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and make merry." So in the obvious sense, the external view is that they're going to dress the son and they're going to kill the fatted calf. But it's also possible to read it as they're dressing the son in a sacrificial ritual clothing, and that he is the fatted calf that is to be killed. Later we have the brother coming into the fields, and he asks, "What is happening?" And the servant said to him, "Thy brother is come, and thy father has killed the fatted calf, because he has received him safe and well." Again, this can be read in two ways, that the brother returned home and the father killed the fatted calf for him. But the ambiguity in the text allows us to read it that the brother is in fact the fatted calf who has returned home and has been slayed and sacrificed. And the reason for the sacrifice is likely this famine that is going through the land and has already attacked the land where the son returned from. And this could perhaps be a sacrifice to hold off this spreading famine. Just so ended the last sentence, "But it was right to make merry and rejoice, because this thy brother was dead and has come to life again, and was lost and has been found." Just as the coin was lost and then found, so it's basically a free coin. And here we have a free son ready to be sacrificed.
So why don't we move on to the third book, the Gnostic Notebook, Volume 3, on Plato, the Fourth Dimension, and the Lost Philosophy. That's really a great title there. So what is this about? What is this fourth dimension, Tim?
Well, yeah, we have the typical examination or expression of the four dimensions. We have single point, which is a zero-dimensional point having neither length nor breadth. And then we stretch this line, this point, into a one-dimensional line. And then this one-dimensional line can be extended into a two-dimensional plane, a square. And this two-dimensional plane is extended perpendicularly into the third dimension, becoming a cube. And in this cube, we have a choice. We can extend it through time or through the fourth dimension, physical dimension, where it becomes the hypercube. And this is a natural progression, a natural geometric progression. It's I learned it very young, and in school I doodled cubes for many years. And this all dates back to Plato, although he didn't pull us into the fourth dimension yet. But it's all implied in the allegory of the cave, a shadow image of the third dimension, what's entrancing these people chained within the cave, just as we are entranced by this three-dimensional image of the fourth dimension, and we think it's real. So that's Plato's is directly responsible, I say, for the progression to the fourth dimension. If the fourth dimension as a physical dimension exists outside of our minds, which is hard to say. And that's Plato's responsibility. So that's basically the first chapter of the book, which shows the lineage from Plato to today and the progression of dimensions. And eventually, in the late 19th, early 20th century, the fourth physical dimension, the hypercube, was seen as the realm of the spirits. And if we developed our minds enough, we could experience life in the fourth dimension, just as the Flatlanders were trapped within their two-dimensional world. We could become aware of our confinement within the three-dimensional world. And for instance, if you have a safe, if you entered the fourth dimension, you could reach within the safe and remove whatever in there without actually passing through the walls. But eventually, science decided that the fourth dimension is time, and the fourth spatial dimension is just a mathematical entity that has no physical analog.
Wow. So, yeah, I think I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson on Joe Rogan, and I think he agreed with you because he was saying the fourth dimension for practicality could be a great storage place. So, in a way, he was agreeing with you, right?
Yes. And so Plato, in addition to the fourth dimension, he had this book, Timaeus. Jesus, I don't know how to pronounce that.
I always butcher it, Tim. Timaeus, I don't know. I just say it.
Good, okay, thank you. He had this book, Timaeus, where he basically identifies a geometric shape for the four elements and also for the fifth element of the universe. And so he said the tetrahedron corresponds to fire, because fire is the sharpest element, and the tetrahedron is the sharpest of the Platonic shapes. And then he assigned the cube to Earth. So Plato assigned the basic shapes to the elements. He had the tetrahedron for fire, the octahedron for air, a sasohedron for water, and cube for Earth. And this was basically the earliest esoteric text assigning these elements to shapes. And now, esoterically, Plato's writings are definitive and as the earliest expression. But my finding is that there was an earlier system which was associated with the mysteries, the sacred mysteries of the Greek culture and the whole Mesopotamian cultures, that there was the sacred teachings that couldn't be spoken of and couldn't be written of. And there was a divine science, as it were. And Plato, as I see it, crafted the texts of Timaeus to obscure and to conceal this earlier divine system. His system is obviously and proudly man-made, and it's rational, logical, a product of the mind, where this earlier system is timeless and divine and based upon qualities of the material world. So Plato functions much like the School of John, in that it conceals this hidden sacred system. And then the rest of the book is basically my attempt to identify this hidden system, to reveal it.
And it's you do a very good job. And for the listener, definitely check out the Gnostic Notebook, Volume 3, for more information, and also his other 2 books, because there is a lot of information and data. But I think that's all the time we have today, Tim. I'd like to thank you very much for coming on Aeon Byte and discussing your 3 volumes of the Gnostic Notebook.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Great to be here, and you're doing a great service to Gnostics everywhere.
Thank you, and people like you, definitely, you guys are the fuel of this, and we hope to bring more information that opens people's eyes and brings deeper truths. But again, thank you so much for coming on, Tim.
Thank you.